You know, there's a strange pattern you'll notice once you start paying attention. A pattern most people never talk about openly, because it makes them uncomfortable, or because it challenges the stories they tell themselves. But the pattern is always there, quietly shaping relationships, silently affecting attraction, and influencing the way people behave without ever realizing it. And the pattern is this. When a woman carries entitlement, when she expects without giving, demands without appreciating, or believes she is owed love simply for existing, she will almost always avoid one particular type of man. A man with boundaries. But why? Why does entitlement collapse the moment it meets a man who actually knows his worth? Why does a woman who is used to control suddenly pull away from someone who cannot be controlled? Why does she avoid the one man who could have actually brought healthy structure into her life? This is the part most people never explore deeply, so let's explore it now. A boundary is not a wall. It is not a punishment. It is not a threat. A boundary is simply a statement of self-respect. It is the quiet truth that says, "This is who I am. This is what I will allow. And this is what I will never accept." Most men never learn to set boundaries because they've been conditioned from childhood to be agreeable, to be accommodating, to be easy to handle. Many men grew up hearing messages like, "Don't upset anyone, don't raise your voice, don't be difficult, don't be selfish, don't say no." They grow into adulthood believing their value is based on how much they tolerate, not on what they demand. But when a man finally wakes up, when he finally chooses self-respect over approval, something shifts dramatically. He no longer chases validation. He no longer apologizes for existing. He no longer accepts disrespect just to avoid conflict. He stops negotiating his worth. That shift is powerful, and unsettling. Especially to a woman who is used to being entitled. Because entitlement survives in environments where boundaries are absent. It thrives around people who say yes even when they feel no. It grows inside relationships where one person consistently chooses peace over truth. So what happens when entitlement meets a man who won't bend? What happens when she tries to manipulate guilt, but he doesn't respond? What happens when she tests him, but he doesn't break? What happens when she expects him to chase her, and he simply doesn't? This is the moment the dynamic collapses. Because entitlement cannot exist in the presence of standards. And most people don't talk about this, but here's the truth. An entitled woman isn't afraid of a strong man. She's afraid of accountability. Let me tell you a story. Not about any one person, but a story you've probably seen reflected in someone you know, maybe even in yourself. There was a man who always tried his best to keep the peace in every relationship he entered. He would apologize even when he did nothing wrong. He would overinvest his time, his energy, his emotions. He would give more than he received because giving made him feel needed. He mistook overfunctioning for love, and self-sacrifice for loyalty. And every relationship he entered followed the same pattern. At first, the woman adored him. She praised his kindness, his gentleness, his patience. She said things like, "You're so different from other men, you make me feel safe, you're everything I've been looking for." But soon, something changed. The more he tolerated, the less she respected him. The more he pleased her, the more she expected. The more he gave, the less valuable he became. And eventually, she began treating him not as a partner, but as a resource. Someone to use, not someone to love. But one day, slowly, quietly, something shifted inside him. He realized that in the name of being good, he had abandoned himself. He realized that he had been trying to earn love from someone who only valued the version of him that required no effort. And so, for the first time in years, he said no. Not loudly. Not angrily. Just calmly. And that single moment, that tiny, almost invisible act of self-respect, changed everything. Because the moment he finally set a boundary, she disappeared. And she didn't leave because he changed. She left because she could no longer control him. Here's the deeper psychological truth. People who are entitled do not want partners. They want compliance. They do not want connection. They want convenience. They do not want a relationship. They want a reflection of their desires. When a man has no boundaries, he makes entitlement comfortable. He reinforces her belief that what she wants should be handed to her without reciprocity. But when a man has strong boundaries, he forces her to confront her own behavior. And accountability is the natural enemy of entitlement. What looks like avoidance is often actually escape. Escape from the discomfort of self-awareness. Escape from having to give what she demands. Escape from having to meet the expectations she places on others. Escape from the emotional mirror a strong man holds up. A woman with entitlement avoids men with boundaries because boundaries expose truth. And truth destroys entitlement. But here's where it gets even more interesting. Most people assume an entitled woman leaves because she wants something better, something more exciting, or something easier. But that's only partly true. The real reason she avoids him is deeper, almost unconscious. Because she knows she cannot manipulate him. Because she knows she cannot guilt him. Because she knows she cannot shame him. Because she knows she cannot break him. A man who cannot be manipulated becomes undesirable to someone who relies on manipulation to feel powerful. A man who won't tolerate disrespect becomes unattractive to someone who uses disrespect to test control. A man who holds boundaries becomes threatening to someone who uses chaos to stay dominant. So she avoids him. Not because he lacks value, but because he has too much of it. Let's go even deeper. There is something profoundly unsettling about a man who knows who he is. A man who says what he means and means what he says. A man who doesn't chase, doesn't beg, doesn't bend. This kind of man triggers two emotions simultaneously. Respect, and fear. Respect, because his strength is undeniable. Fear, because his strength is unmanageable. He cannot be controlled. And to someone who survives through control, that is terrifying. So instead of rising to meet his standards, she runs from them. Instead of growing into the relationship, she escapes it. Instead of reflecting on herself, she blames him. It becomes easier to label him toxic, cold, emotionally unavailable, too harsh, or too direct, than to admit the truth. I cannot handle the version of me that he reveals. Boundaries reveal the truth about people. Who respects you? Who values you? Who fears you? Who uses you? And who never truly loved you? A woman who is genuinely mature, emotionally, psychologically, spiritually, will be drawn to a man with boundaries. To her, boundaries feel like safety, not threat. They feel like clarity, not control. They feel like strength, not rigidity. To a mature woman, a man with boundaries becomes a man she can trust. Because his no means something. So his yes can be believed. But entitlement does not want trust. It wants advantage. And advantage dies in the presence of integrity. Here's the irony. The very thing that makes a man valuable is the thing that pushes entitled women away. His boundaries. His standards. His self-respect. His refusal to be manipulated. His unwillingness to tolerate disrespect. But this is not a loss. It is protection. Every person who leaves your life because of your boundaries is someone who was only there to violate them. People often fear losing others if they set boundaries, but the truth is much simpler. You don't lose anyone by having boundaries. You only lose people who were using you. So when an entitled woman avoids a man with boundaries, she is not rejecting him. She is avoiding accountability. She is avoiding self-reflection. She is avoiding growth. And in that avoidance, she reveals exactly why she never deserved him in the first place. Most men think that losing an entitled woman is a failure. But it's not. It's a filter. It's life removing someone who could never love them in the first place. Someone who mistook kindness for weakness. Someone who mistook silence for submission. Someone who mistook patience for permission. A man with boundaries is not hard to love. He is simply hard to use. And that is why entitled women avoid him. Not because he is the wrong man. But because he is the right man for someone else. Someone who is ready. Someone who is mature. Someone who is capable of giving, not just taking. Someone who sees a man with boundaries not as a threat, but as a blessing. If you are a man who has learned to set boundaries, you will lose people. But you will also attract the kind of woman who respects your truth. A woman who brings reciprocity, not entitlement. A woman who values honesty, not manipulation. A woman who understands that love is not about power, but about partnership. And when that woman arrives, you will realize something profound. You never needed the people who left. They needed you. They just didn't deserve you.